Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be creating a wedding card, a Mr. and Mrs. wedding card. I've made a couple of these recently and have just been having fun making them. So this is an alphabet die set from AliExpress and there's just one of each letter, so I'm going to need to cut these out a couple of times because Mrs. and Mr. obviously just are MRS. So I cut them out a couple of times out of Nina Solar White cardstock, and I've got them lined up here on my grid mat because I'm just using some low-tack tape to tape a line about halfway, about the middle of the line, about the middle of the letters, sorry. And then I'm using some sticky ink and some embossing powder. I'm going to use some gold embossing powder on them. This is a Wow Pale Gold embossing powder. So I've put it on and I'm going to heat set this still with the tape in place, and obviously a wee bit of embossing powder sets on the tape, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the letters at all. So now these have half white and half gold. So I'll peel them off here and you'll be able to see the results. Okay, so I've got the letters all done and they look pretty good to me. Okay, and now we're going to move on to this leafy scroll pattern. I've cut 4 or 5 of these from some white cardstock, and I want to keep the gold theme going using the same colour of gold because the gold cardstocks that I have don't quite match the same gold of the embossing powder. So I am going to put sticky ink, embossing ink on one of the scrolls. Probably an easier way to do this would have been just to put sticky ink down on a plain piece of cardstock and emboss the piece of cardstock and then cut the scroll out of that. However, I've done it my own difficult way as per usual. So I've put sticky embossing powder, ink on the front of this, one of the plain white ones, and then I'm dipping it in the embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set it and do it a couple of times because you can see already that there are some places that I've missed. And that's okay, as I said, probably a much easier way of doing it, but that's okay. So I'm just pressing the ink pad down onto the bits that I can see that I've missed, and it's kind of tricky getting the embossing powder and the sticky ink down into the embossed parts of those leaves. They've got lines on them, so I'm just making sure that they've got as much ink on them as I can, and then dipping it back into the embossing powder and then heat setting it again, and that did a pretty good job. So that's all done, and then popping the embossing powder away. As I said, I'm always one of those people who would spill it if it was sitting on my desk. This card is going to be on a black background, so I'm just cutting a little piece. This piece of cardstock is 4 by 5 1/4, so it just leaves a little border around on the card. This is a Concord and 9th stamp set and it's called Sophisticated Script. This is the only stamp set that I own that had a ampersand, the and symbol. I didn't have a die, one didn't come with the die set of alphabet letters. I searched through my whole stash to see if I could find one, and that was the only one that I had, so I really had to make do. But that's okay. Anyhow, so I'm going to have Mr. and Mrs. on the card, and then it's going to be surrounded by the leafy scrolls. I'm just playing around with the layout here and how I wanted the Mr. and Mrs., whether I want it straight up and down, slightly over to the right, or whether I wanted it off center a little bit. So yeah, anyhow, I'm just putting on some powder from my anti-static powder tool. That one in particular is from EK Success, and then using the embossing ink to stamp the ampersand and adding the same gold embossing powder to it, and then I'm just going to heat set that one. Sorry about all the camera wiggles, I'm getting something out of my cupboard up above me. Now when I did, because this black cardstock was cheaper cardstock, I think. It warps quite a lot when I use the heat gun to melt the and symbol. So I did add some removable adhesive onto the back of it, and I've taped it down temporarily to my mat just so that I can work on it much easier when I'm putting these letters down. I'm using a little bit of Ranger Multi-Matte Medium to stick down the Mr. and Mrs. letters, and I've got my glue in a little precision tip bottle which you can purchase from AliExpress. I also have a video on my channel that shows that little precision tip bottle up close a little bit better if you're interested. So I'm just sticking down the letters, and I was just using my T-ruler to make sure that I got the letters straight on straight, and then the Mrs. is much easier to center up because it's got the R in the center. And try and make sure that they've got the same spacing between the letters to the best of my ability. And now I'm just going to stick the scrolls on around about just all over the place. I didn't really have a plan or a pattern. I just was sticking them on. I've cut that gold scroll that I embossed in half, and I'm using the Ranger Multi-Matte Medium to stick these on again. I did find later on in the video I used a Zig 2A glue pen to try and stick on the gold ones, and they didn't stick very well to the Zig glue, didn't stick very well to the embossing because there was some embossed gold on the back of them as well, so I think that maybe affected how they stuck down, but the glue pen did do really well just for the plain white cardstock ones, and it's nice and easy to put on the back too. So I was just reaching for whatever glue I had handy. So you can see I am using some acrylic blocks to hold down the scrolls, and I had to go away and do a little job, and so I've come back and I'm going to cut off all of the excess. And I did have a couple more scrolls left over, but I just ended up using basically what was on my desk, I think. The leftover little bits that I'm cutting, and in particular the gold ones, because I only embossed one gold scroll. And so I'm just taking little bits, you can see they're just really scraps, and filling in some of the blanks around the Mr. and Mrs. words. So some places I thought I wanted a few more leaves or just had a little patch that looked a little bit empty. I just added a couple more in with the Multi-Matte Medium. And I wasn't worried about having the gold and the white mix, that was fine, I didn't have a certain pattern. Then I'm just going to pop up the black panel with foam tape. This foam tape is from AliExpress as well. And put plenty of foam tape on the back and then pop it up. The only other thing I am going to do to this card today is to add some Nuvo drops, and it's in the white colour, nice white Nuvo drops, and just finish the card off nicely. That was my card for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that you'll join me next time. Feel free to share my videos around if you've enjoyed them, and I have a link to the products in the description box below. Thanks so much. Bye.